All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tracing the first 8 days of Imam Husayn's journey to Karbala. If you know the history, you know this is a narrative that literally reshaped empires. But at its absolute core, it's really this intimate, devastating journey of one family making a stand against completely overwhelming odds. We're going to walk chronologically through those crucial first 8 days in the desert, zeroing in on the major turning points that led to one of history's most famous sieges. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we're talking about, we've got to look at the numbers. We're looking at a staggering army of 30,000 soldiers, eventually surrounding a tiny, family-led caravan of just 72 people. 30,000 against 72. Keep that massive disparity in the back of your mind as we go through this, because it highlights exactly the kind of physical and psychological warfare at play here. I mean, why did a sprawling empire find it necessary to mobilize an entire military force against a handful of people? So how did we get here? It all starts with a staunch refusal to bow to a tyrant. Before he died, the previous ruler, Muawiyah, actually warned his son Yazid to be careful with Imam Husayn. Yazid knew for sure that securing Husayn's allegiance was absolutely critical to making his own rule legitimate. But Husayn, being the grandson of the Prophet, explicitly stated there was no way he could ever pledge allegiance to a ruler like Yazid. So, to protect his principles and to avoid a bloodbath in his own home city, Husayn was forced to pack up, leave Medina, and head toward Mecca. When you look at the physical route they took, you notice a massive, fateful shift. He didn't actually set out for Karbala initially. His target was Kufa, driven by what really looked like this huge groundswell of local support. But as we'll see, that path between Mecca and Kufa quickly turns into an absolute minefield of betrayal. Now, there was a brief and, as it turns out, completely false glimmer of hope. The people of Kufa, a city that had a deep history of supporting Husayn's father, Imam Ali, desperately invited Husayn to come lead them. We're not talking about a couple of letters here, they sent thousands. So, to feel things out, Husayn sends his highly trusted, brilliant cousin, Muslim bin Aqil. And when he gets there, the response is just overwhelming. In a matter of days, over 18,000 people pledged their allegiance to Husayn. Muslim bin Aqil immediately writes back saying, "The city is ready. Come." But man, that hope vanished in a flash, turning into absolute betrayal. Yazid, over in Damascus, hears about this uprising and sends his ruthless enforcer, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, to crush it. And Ibn Ziyad was a master of psychological warfare. He actually rides into Kufa wearing a black mask. The locals started cheering because they thought Imam Husayn had finally arrived. But then he takes off the mask at the governor's house and pure panic sets in. He secretly pulls in all the tribal leaders and gives them a choice. Take these massive bribes and gain power, or I will bring down a massive Syrian army and wipe you all out. And you know what? That psychological warfare worked perfectly. The tribal leaders basically panicked and terrified their people into abandoning the cause entirely. Almost overnight, Muslim bin Aqil is left completely isolated. On the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, after putting up an incredibly brave fight despite being severely wounded, he's captured. Ibn Ziyad ordered him dragged to the highest roof of the palace. Looking out toward Mecca, where he knew Husayn was traveling from, he sent his final salutations before being brutally martyred, thrown right off the roof. Just like that, the promise of Kufa was officially dead. Meanwhile, back in Mecca, Imam Husayn is uncovering Yazid's plots. Assassins had actually disguised themselves as pilgrims to kill him during Hajj. Husayn, absolutely refusing to let blood be spilled in the holy sanctuary, converts his Hajj into a lesser pilgrimage and decides to leave right then and there. But before heading out, he gives this incredibly powerful speech. He isn't promising them victory, or gold, or power. He tells them straight up, this path leads to certain death. He knew exactly what the ultimate sacrifice was going to be. This is a super crucial point to remember. This march, it was completely voluntary. Out in the desert, the devastating news of Muslim bin Aqil's martyrdom finally reaches the caravan. Husayn actually stops everyone and openly tells them what happened. He also mentions a dream he had of his grandfather, the Prophet, telling him to keep moving forward toward his martyrdom. So Husayn actively sheds any of the half-hearted followers. He basically says, you are free to go. And a lot of people who were just in it for political gain, they left. That meant only the people who were 100% ready to die for the cause stayed behind. To truly understand the mindset of the people who stayed, just look at Zuhair bin Qayn. He runs into Imam Husayn's caravan on the road. They have this brief but apparently profoundly spiritual meeting, and Zuhair's entire worldview just shifts. Knowing exactly what kind of bloodbath was coming, he immediately divorces his wife, tells her to run to safety with her family, and joins Husayn's camp. I mean, that is unconditional devotion right there.
all earthly attachments were just completely severed.
So that brings us to the interception, being stopped dead in the desert. The caravan is suddenly blocked by 1,000 opposing soldiers and forced into this barren, unforgiving landscape near the Euphrates River. Hussein turns to the locals and asks, "What is this place called?" And they tell him, Karbala. Moving to the 2nd of Muharram, the tents are finally pitched. The journey was essentially over, right? Now the siege begins. This is where that massive power imbalance we talked about really hits home. You've got Hussein on one side with just 72 companions, and remember, that includes women and young children. On the other side, Yazid sends in Omar bin Saad, and those enemy ranks just explode to an unbelievable 30,000 heavily armed soldiers. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would an army of thousands need even more reinforcements to fight 72 people? Well, amazingly, historical accounts point to the intense, sheer terror of one specific man, Hussein's brother, Hazrat Abbas. Abbas was known for such insane bravery and skill in battle that fighting him was said to be like fighting Imam Ali himself. The enemy army knew this, and Abbas was standing there like an absolute mountain between them and Hussein. And things get incredibly grim by the 7th of Muharram, marking the brutal blockade of thirst. Because they couldn't break Hussein's resolve, the opposing army weaponized the environment itself. A specialized detachment of 500 soldiers was deployed straight to the banks of the Euphrates River with one ruthless order: cut off all water to Hussein's camp. Not one single drop was allowed to reach the family of the Prophet. Try to put yourself in that sensory nightmare. The blazing desert sun is just beating down on these canvas tents. Inside, people like Hussein's son, Imam Zainul Abidin, are already severely sick. But the most gut-wrenching part is what it did to the kids. Innocent children like Bibi Sakina are wandering the camp, their lips cracked and bleeding, crying out for their father, just begging for water. Grown adults were collapsing from the sheer intense dehydration. Seeing this horrific suffering, especially of the babies and the women, Imam Hussein goes straight to the enemy lines. He makes it crystal clear, look, your fight is with me. What did these innocent kids do? Just let them have a drop of water. It really exposes the absolute lack of mercy from the opposing army. They coldly rejected him. They basically said, we have strict orders, no water until you completely submit to Yazid. Which pushes us to the 8th of Muharram, the final ultimatum. Hussein tries one last time to negotiate a peaceful exit, but the enemy's response is an absolute wall. Swear allegiance to Yazid or die. The historical sources are actually pretty clinical about what was physically happening to those 72 companions at this point. Their bodies are literally shutting down from thirst. We're talking blood thickening, hearts racing uncontrollably just to pump it, cognitive strain from the extreme heat, and yet not a single one of them broke. Not one companion suggested giving in to the demands. As we wrap up this explainer of those critical first 8 days, I really want you to think about this one profound question. What compels a tiny group of people watching their own children suffer from blinding thirst, staring down 30,000 heavily armed soldiers to just hold their ground? It really forces us to confront the true cost of standing by your principles when you are facing absolute annihilation. It's this timeless testament that an army can surround a camp, they can cut off the water, but they cannot always